Plan is, is for us still to play the spring game. We'll continue to look at the health throughout this week and into next week, but plan is to have a game format, on the 12th, which will be great. And then, so we could have, a lot of different things going on that day. After the spring game is our Saddle Up event, which is something that has been going on now. This will be our third year where it's a fundraising event here for NIL in the Woody, and it's actually a country concert that we've been putting on now. This will be the third year in a row. And just quickly, the story behind it is that when my family and I were on the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer a few years ago, we bid on north to Nashville, won the auction, and decided to do a concert here in the Woody. And every year it's gotten bigger and bigger. This year, Russell Dickerson and North to Nashville will both be playing. There'll be a lot of great events. Jack and Will and, some of our former players, Donovan Jackson, Seth McLaughlin, they'll all be there as well. So it's a great night to not only celebrate the championship, but also raise money for NIL. So April 12th should be a great day here.
All right, thank you, Coach. Folks, we're going to keep them to one question because I got a lot of people wanting to ask questions. Owen up, Dave Biddle, 24/7.
I was going to ask if he was going to sing at the I Can't Ask Two. Okay, I'll just ask
I was on stage last year, but no singing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you don't want to hear me sing.
I know you said many times that everybody has to lead their own way, but the quarterback has to be a leader. Everybody leads their own way. How is Julian as a leader so far?
Yeah, he's finding his way, like you're saying. He's has credibility that he's building in the locker room, and you really do it three different ways. It's your character, who you are as a person. Julian's, good man. He does things the right way. He lives his life right off the field, and when he says he's going to do something, he does it. Connection, I think. He spent time with the guys in the locker room and has built some of those connections with guys on the team. And then it comes down to competency. And that's where when you step on that field, you got to be in command. And I think the more you do it and the more consistent you get, the more confidence you have leading. When you're focused on just doing your job, it can take away a little bit from the leadership part of it. But I think he's getting more and more comfortable out there. And I think all the quarterbacks are. And every day you do that, you're able to let your personality show and let your leadership show. But at the end of the day, the first thing they have to do is do their job, and then it goes from there.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
I'm going to try to do a Tim May impersonation here. Two things. One, is the Caleb Downs running back thing still happening? And also, just a kind of a bigger thing, Syracuse and Colorado tried to do a joint spring game situation. As a person who's been in the NFL and seen the benefit of that, but also some of the cons of that, is that something you would ever be open to the idea of doing, whether it's a spring game or a joint practice?
Caleb at running back isn't something we're looking at right now this spring. It could be up for discussion in the preseason, but not right now. He's still coming back from kind of a nagging injury. You want to make sure he's good to go, but and he will be. But and then secondly, I think if teams want to do that, then I think. The rules committee should take a look at that and allow folks to do that if that's what they want to do. For us, I'd be concerned about the health because when you practice, there's certain rules of engagement that have to happen. And so one of the things we really have to teach our players is how to practice. And, 7-on-7 teamwork, if we're not tackling people to the ground, what is the tempo? And you start talking about thud and different things, and we don't take side shots, and when receivers are in the air, we don't take their legs out and do those types of things. I'd be very, very concerned with practicing against another team when the rules of engagement aren't clear, or you're not going against one of your teammates that you're trying to take care of. I think we all understand what that could be like, but when you're playing now a 16-game season, I feel like we need to do a little bit better job of making sure, especially with a 105-man roster it looks like that we're headed towards here this summer. The health is one of the most important things we head into the preseason. So for me right now, it's not something that I would consider, but for those who want to do it, I think they should be able to.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, this year's staff has some more QCs and analysts than a little more than past years. Just wondering, now that you've changed the rule, the NCAA changed the rules about who can be involved in practice and on the field working with guys. Are those roles more valuable than in the past?
Yeah, they have more of an impact because now they're all coaches, where in the past you just had the 10 coaches and then the graduate assistants. So, like you said, these guys can have more of an impact on the field. I look at the offensive line. We have 3 guys every day, chasing these guys around, and Tyler and Marcus and Coach Dickey. I mean, they're doing a great job. But in the past, it was really just the offensive line coach and a graduate assistant. Now, you're getting some 3 experienced guys every day working with the offensive line, working in recruiting. It can help in meetings. It splits up individual time, which is like really important out there, because everyone can coach on the field. So I think it's great, and our guys are certainly maximizing it, and I think our staff feels more engaged when they're actually able to make an impact on the field.
Austin Ward, podcast.
Ryan, how would you describe your satisfaction, your encouragement, your discouragement in the quarterbacks? It's 2 weeks. I know there's so far to go. Are they where they thought you'd be now? Are they ahead, behind?
It depends on when you ask. I think, yeah. Right now, I guess, I remember when I was in the NFL, I'd listen to some of these scouts talk about players, and they never wanted to show their hand, so they'd make comments like mixed bag to the negative. That's the way I'd feel coming off the field today. But there's been really good progress in that room. All 3 of them, I can, recognize that there's been growth in all areas. And then there's other moments where they have 2 or 3 plays in a row that, I just, we all get frustrated, but we're going to keep coaching them and keep pushing them. I think that they have the right attitude. I think they have a growth mindset in that they come in every day and put the work in and the preparation in. They just need more and more reps. So we got to give it to them. And I think going into the spring, or at least coming off of last year, thinking about the spring, I felt like, boy, we really need to be smart about what we do this spring. Need to cut back on the spring, and then as you get into it and you realize, a lot of the new faces, I realized we need more and more reps. So, we're trying to do that as best we can, but also keeping the guys healthy. Today was a helmets practice. The next 3 this week will be padded. And a big part of that is learning how to practice with each other to keep guys healthy so we can get these guys more and more reps. And I think they just need more and more reps. But there's certainly growth there. We're certainly not where we need to be, but we're getting there.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Yeah, and just in general, the whole team, 8 practices in, are there any players that have really stood out to you so far that have really made a move this spring?
It's been good to watch CJ work and in sort of a new role. I think he's embraced it and doing a nice job. Arvell as well, is doing some really good things, and it's fun to watch as Coach Patricia and Coach Walton kind of put this puzzle together on the guys that we have. So I think both those guys have stood out. I like the way the other linebackers are running around, Peyton Pierce and Riley, TJ. It's been good to watch them. Jermaine is now out there, and you feel him every day. He's competitive along with Davison and the other corners. I think both Jalen and Malik have made a move at safety. I think that's been good. And Caleb right now, Caleb Downs has been practicing limited, so it's been good to get those guys in there. The running back room has been good. I think James. It's hard in the spring to evaluate running backs because we're not taking them to the ground really very often. So, but James looks good, and CJ and Bo, all 3 of those guys, and even Sam has done a nice job. So, again, hard to evaluate, but there's improvement there. The tight end room is deep as we thought it would be. There's a lot of growth there. Up front, I feel good right now, or feel solid interior. The development of the tackles is still something that's a work in progress. That I feel like we have what we need there, but there just needs to continue to get more and more reps and feel it. But there's definitely improvement there. And then at wideout, to me, we've got to do a really good job with the depth at wideout. I think at the top end, we're solid, but 4 through 6 has really got to come on for us.
Tony German, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, what are your 48 hours like after the first spring scrimmage, when you've said in the past it feels like you're never going to win a game that season, and then just what logistically, what are you doing?
Well, the first thing that it just depends on what kind of weekend you want to have. If you want to have a good weekend, you make a cut up of the 1s, then you watch the 2s, then you watch the 3s. If you don't want to have a good weekend, you just watch the 1s, 2s, and 3s in order of how they practice, and then it's a long weekend. So it just depends on how you want to do that. But when you're going against each other in the spring, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. We're still installing some things, some guys in other places. But as spring goes on, typically what you see in the spring is what you see in the fall. I mean, it just kind of happens that way. So, we watch the film, we make adjustments, we make the corrections, and we move on. And that's the job of the coaches, but it's also the job of the players to continue to make corrections to get better. I know that seems like a little thing, but if you're continually making the same mistakes over and over again, you're not getting better. That's a problem. If you make mistakes, we get it, but you got to make those corrections. So we're in the middle of spring right now, halfway through, and a little bit more than halfway through, I guess, now. And so now we got to really see those guys make improvements. It's really important. If we're just kind of flatlining there, that's not a good sign.
Matt Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, there's obviously a lot of discussion about the quarterbacks this offseason. When we talked to them, they said they kind of tune out that noise as much as possible. Is that a good preparation for whichever guy wins this job? He's going to have ups and downs. There's going to be conversation about his performance. Can that help kind of train them to tune that out, or however you want to phrase it?
Yeah, they're going to have to be that way. You're not really used to it until you're in it. When you go through the recruiting process, everything is positive. There's really no negative. I guess maybe for somebody who may flip their decision or something, they may feel some negative pushback from like a fan base. But other than that, everything is positive. And then whether the young new guy, everything's positive. And then it can turn negative real quick. And so you have to, whether it's the positive feedback or the negative feedback, you can't let it affect you. And more importantly, you can't let your family get affected by it, because that's something that happens a lot is family members can start to get involved and start to feel a certain way. And so it's all something that we talk about in the recruiting process, that we have to continually, like you said, ignore some of the noise that's going on. And these guys, all three of them get along well, and it's good. And these are young guys, and you'd like to think that it'll be like Will did last year, who's an older guy, and he's 6'5", and he's been around for a while, and he was able to sustain throughout 16 games. But the truth is, when you look around the country, that doesn't always happen that way. So, my guess is that we're going to need all three of these guys. And who knows where it's going to go? I don't have a crystal ball. But that relationship in that room is going to be important. And ultimately, that room has to be the best quarterback room in the country. That's the expectation at Ohio State.
Noah Weisskopf, The Lantern.
Ryan, a lot of people have talked about the impact Devin Sanchez might have right away. How do you see him progress throughout the spring? And just what has stood out to you about him in particular?
Yeah, he got the right mindset. He's out there competing, and he's doing some good things. He's also making some mistakes and learning from that and growing. And that's again, I think we're a young team right now. We're young, and I'm not talking about Devin in particular, but just across the board. Just when young guys are out there, they have to learn, make mistakes, and grow from it. Learn how to take the last play and move on to work the next play. And I think Devin has the right mindset and just needs to continue to get reps under his belt and grow from it. But obviously, we all know he has the talent and has a bright future, and he's going to be a really good player here.
Tom Taveri, WBNS.
Coach, 2 weeks in, how much do things ramp up now? I mean, you've been cautious because of the 16-game season and whatever, and how far can you push it?
Well, it got ramped up last week. I mean, it was very intense last week. We almost had to pull them back at one point. I mean, this is a group that likes to get after it. They're edgy. There was a point where we almost got a little bit too emotional at a couple of spots, but that's because these guys are fighting for positions, that's the way you want it as a coach. But it's ramped up. It's ramped up now. I think our coaches feel it. I think the players feel it. They know. We got to be ready to go week one. So it's already in our back of our minds as we have that urgency coming off of last year. But yeah, that is all behind us, and it's all about moving forward. And we all know that these guys got to grow and get on the field and get this experience. So every day out there, every rep matters, and it's ramped up in a big way right now.
Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Last year, Ryan, you had Will Howard at this time. You knew you had a veteran quarterback, an old guy. You kind of have the opposite this year. Have you had to adjust your patience, the way you grade these guys almost on a youth curve? Because, to compare them to Will a year ago is probably not fair.
I think that's true, yeah. When you've done it for the first time and you make a mistake, like you said, you have to take a deep breath, because, they haven't had that experience before. When that plays happened or that situation's happened, and then the mistake happens again, that's where we got to do a better job. But all these guys, they're doing a lot of things for the first time, and like you said, there's a growing phase there, but they're pushing through that. They're learning. They're on the film. Once they get done with like this practice, they're going to watch it on their own, then they'll get the notes from Billy, and they'll come in tomorrow, make the corrections, and then it's on to the next install. And we ask a lot from them, and also trying to figure out what fits these quarterbacks. What fit Will, as we all know, is different than the quarterbacks we've had in the past. It'll be the same thing this year based on the surrounding cast. So that's all part of the journey. There's certain things that we do that aren't going to change, but then we need to figure out what fits these guys as well to allow them to have a chance to be successful. We're throwing everything at them. The defense is throwing a lot at them right now, which is great. It's all good in the end. Again, makes for some long days, but that's okay. It's all part of the process.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
To that kind of same point, when you're watching these quarterbacks and you feel the way you do about their performance on a given day, you ever have to remind yourself to, like, oh, that's maybe the most talented secondary group in the country right there, or, not grading them on a curve, but
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it for sure. But the expectation here is to do that against everybody else in the country. And I think about the run that we've gone on, from the Indiana game, even starting next year. You're talking about like 7 major games back to back to back. So I mean, these guys know what it's supposed to look like and go against really good players. But that, to your point, is something we also talk about in recruiting. Is that in the game of football, if you want to develop, if you want to get better, you have to practice at a high level because you only play so many games. I think we obviously played 16 games last year, but I think we had over 100 practices. And then if you add the spring onto it, now you're north of 100 practices, and that's really where you get better, is that practice every day. And when you grab onto the term iron sharpens iron, you're going to get better against going against really good players every day, and that's a huge selling point at Ohio State. And that's one of the reasons why so many recruits want to come to Ohio State, because if you can cover Jeremiah, or you can get open against IGB, or you can block CJ coming off the edge, or you can get around, Tegra Chabot, or whatever it might be. We combine as many drills as we possibly can. Sonny against Will Kazmarek, or whatever that might be. So huge selling point, but it's also the mindset that these guys come in with. You're going into a locker room with a bunch of like-minded guys who want to be the best in the world at what they do, and they certainly have a purpose about them. So yeah, we feel like when you go against either side of the ball every day, it should allow you confidence against any team you play in the country.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Ryan, when you were running through some of the names there a minute ago, you mentioned Arvell Reese. What specifically stood out about him this spring?
Yeah, Arvell, when you just look at him physically, he's worked very hard to build up his body to get stronger, but his football IQ. He's played in some meaningful snaps, obviously coming off of last year. He's taken the next step. And sometimes after the season's over, it can only be a few weeks, but you come in with a different mindset as you start to move and your role changes within the team. I feel like that's happened for Arvell. I think it's been fun to watch as the defensive staff has worked to, figure out how to maximize his strengths. He has a lot of them, and he's got the right mindset.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Last year's offensive line issues gave you a lot of depth. You got a lot of guys back. How is it shaking out? Do you have people assigned to specific positions? How's that look right now?
Well, when you think about where we are with the limited roster size in 105 and coming off of last year, moving Donovan from guard to tackle and what all comes with that, I think one of the things we talked about in the offseason with Tyler was having somebody who has a primary position and then a secondary position, so that the best way to put it is, your best 5 are out there, and then your 6th best player or your 7th best player is the next one in the game, as opposed to, well, we lost a tackle, so now we have to maybe go to our 8th best guy and put him at tackle because 6 and 7 don't know how to play tackle. If that makes sense. So having the flexibility to do that is important. And so I think our guys have embraced that. They've done a nice job of moving around a little bit. There's a couple guys out there that have only played one position. Big Ethan right now is just playing tackle, but the more flexibility these guys have, not only helps us in terms of their value on this team, but also at the next level, showing the NFL folks that they can move around, which is important. So, right now we're moving guys around pretty good. Those guys are getting a bunch of reps. And like you said, there's guys with experience in there but they're also guys that are young. I mean, Luke Montgomery has played now, and he's played in big games, but he also hasn't, started for a whole season before. So Carson Hinsman has. Tegra's still, growing in certain areas, but has played a lot of football. Austin Sarabelt has now played, but they weren't like starters the whole year. So But a good group, and we're building more and more depth with Phillip in there and with Ethan and Ian Moore. Josh Badia's in the mix. So like you said, I think we've built some depth in there, but having a primary position and a secondary position has allowed us more flexibility.
Jim May, BNS, radio and TV.
Ryan, you were a young coach one time. James Laurinaitis has sort of like learned how to be a coach through the. What is the toughest part about learning how to run a room where you've got graduate students and you got, 202 students and you got brand new students, rookies and stuff? How has he progressed in that regard of the teaching aspect of the game, and what's impressed you about him over the last couple of years?
Yeah, making the transition from a player to a coach is not easy at all. And there's only a handful of really, very good players that have gone on to become very good coaches. Some certainly have, but when you're somebody like James who's played for a long time, you get a certain amount of credibility when you walk into a room. But playing and coaching is very different. Just the overall commitment to the hours you have to work, is one thing. How you communicate, you're completely out of control when the ball snapped, and understanding that it isn't what you know, it's what your players know. And it isn't giving them too much information, it's giving them the right information, allowing them to play fast. And then it's being organized with your thoughts, being organized for meetings, making sure you're prepared. And then it's the communication. When you're a player, you don't always have to be the best communicator. You just got to play when the ball snapped. So those are all things that you learn and you grow from, and a lot of it's experience. And when you get someone like James or Brian, who are very smart, they learn quickly. And those are two examples of guys who have done that. They've invested the time in to do it, and they've learned, each year how to grow as a coach. And one good thing about having former players is, for the most part, they're willing to take criticism too. Where coaches don't always do that. Sometimes, I always say coaches are sometimes the most uncoachable players. I've heard that before, or coachable people. It's true. But, guys like James, guys like Brian are used to getting feedback consistently. So you can tell them what you see, and they grow from it and take the feedback. And I think both of them are excellent at that.
Got time for just a couple more. Stefan Kreisnik, Cleveland.com.
You talked a few weeks ago about, the positions that you felt like maybe you could add some depth. Defensive line be one of those. Specifically at tackle, do you feel like some guys on that depth chart are starting to come along to where maybe you feel like you have more depth than you thought coming into this spring?
We need those guys to step up. I think there's certain things that have been good, and there's certain things that have flashed. But every time we say the word flash, that means it's probably not consistent enough. The ability's there, so it's an area that we've got to continue now in the second half of spring to see a push out of that group.
And final question, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein, but with CJ and Logan kind of getting two new guys in there, CJ new position, but do you feel like you have what you need at edge right now, and where do you see that group kind of go in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think that with Caden Kenyatta, like you said, Logan, CJ playing there, and we're getting a decent pass rush right now, but we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks if we feel like it's enough to move into next year, but there's been good growth there. I've been impressed with Zion Grady as a young player. I think that if he can learn and grow and get better and not get caught up in being a freshman and kind of flatlining here and continue to get better in the second half of the spring, I think he can help us as a freshman, which would be great. So there's a lot of guys grinding in there, and hard to make an evaluation with so much install going on, but certainly these next couple weeks will be big.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Sure.